Hey everybody, how we doing? It's me, Joe Sayers, back here for the Music Factory Studios. Today I'm going to walk you through something I use personally all the time. Now 2020 has been its own enigma as a year, but as I was preparing for shows that just are not going to happen this year because of things going on in the world, I had been using a iPad as my live amplifier for 3 or 4 years. So I decided to invest in an iPad Pro. I thought, you know what, it gives me cheaper connectivity if I run into an issue and need another output, which is a big plus because the other iPads I'll use Lightning. So the only adapters I would have for an audio interface or for our digital mixers is a Lightning to USB camera connection kit. With the iPad Pro, you get USB-C, so pretty much any USB-C dongle, which I have a bunch because of MacBooks and other laptops that I have. That gives me the option to be able to grab another dongle just in case I was to kill one. Let's say I step on it and break it or something. I always kept 2 of those Lightning adapters, those camera connection kits from Apple, and they're $30 or something at your local Walmart. But if you're in some no-name one-horse town, let's say, playing in a club and there's not a Walmart for 40 miles and you break one, guess what? You don't have an amp. And I had a redundant setup too. I had a little on and off. It was a amp and a pedal as a backup thing. I'm never going to use that. I've never really had to use that. And I've never ran into any issues with the connectors, but I always kept 2. I have killed one on a live festival show, reached into my bag, changed them out. Took me about a total of a minute, so it was no big deal. I had been using the Mesa collection from IK Multimedia's Amplitude for iPad, and I was using the dual rectifier. It worked great amp for live performance. And then along came this new Joe Satriani collection, which comes with basically the SJ50, which is a PV5150, a Satch VM, which is basically a Marshall, and the Boston 100, which is a Rockman, which I really think is awesome. But for this video, I'm going to talk about what my live setup is and how I use it. Now, I don't have my Blue board hooked up at the moment. It's in storage for playing live. But I'm going to walk you through my amp setup and my reasoning why I go through it this way. So basically, I have the SJ50, and the SJ50 is just a killer amp. I always liked a 5150. But man, they were you couldn't turn them down in small clubs and get anything that didn't sound like a fizzy mess. So I'm really happy because the only other 5150 option you had in Amplitude was this basic 1 channel, which sounds a lot like a real 5150 on the hot channel, but it didn't have the clean option. So, when this came out, I'm like, yes, a real multi-channel amp. So this amp sounds amazing. I mean, it just I won't play very much with my mic open because I'll get feedback. I've got it coming through my speakers so I can hear it. I'll turn the mic off toward the end of the video and play around with some of the settings. But first, I have the Stargate, which is from the Brian May collection. It's an awesome gate. There's also one from Dimebag Darrell as well called the Dime Noise Gate. And what always shocked me about this app at first was the gate was just, there was not a gate. So you had to buy the Slash collection to get a gate. So I bought that just to get a gate, and it's okay, but it's older algorithms, and the Dime Gate and this Stargate are just light years ahead of the Slash Gate. Not because the Slash Gate is bad, it's just older algorithms, and you get a few pops and clicks working that way. Now, a lot of you are going to ask, how do you set this up? Well, when we go out and play small clubs, we take a Behringer X18, which is a desktop mixer. The first 2 channels have high Z input. So I've got a little cheapo $100 wireless set. I plug one in into channel 2. I'm channel 2. And an acoustic guitar goes in channel, no, I'm sorry. A bass guitar goes into channel 1. And my iPad goes into the USB on the mixer because it's also an 18 input, 18 output audio interface. The bass player on that's the quick setup if the bass player takes an amp. If he doesn't take an amp, what I do is I take my MacBook and it gets used through MainStage and a couple other applications as input, you know, 1 for him, 2 for me, gives him an amp, me an amp. If the other guitar player even wants another amp, I'll take the MacBook and we'll do it that way. If they do it that way, what I do is I take a regular audio interface like a Focusrite 2i2 or something, and I'll hook up to my iPad because I personally like to use the iPad amps. I've got it all kind of dialed in. I don't care to give them whatever they want, and I'll take the outputs out of that audio interface and put them into channels, you know, like 17, 18, or 15, 16, and give myself stereo. That way, they've got the high Z inputs on the small board to use for themselves, and the outputs work. It's all the same. But if it's just me, I plug directly into the board, and I go into a pair of channels on the board, and that gives me full control over everything on the iPad as well as the mixer as far as my guitar is concerned. Now, one of the interesting parts about this is how well it actually sounds. Even on the small board, which has the USB input, it's super easy and it sounds great. The trick is, when you're using a mixer like this that has a USB input, when you plug into the high Z input, leave your input gain at 0. I'm gonna let you think about that for a second, okay? Leave your input gain on the channel at 0. Why? Because it's high Z. It doesn't need any more, okay? Your preamp is actually here on the screen. Excuse me. That's not what you think it is. But if you want more gain, turn up the gain on the amplifier. Well, if I turn it up on the interface, the amp starts to feel like a real amplifier. Yeah, here's where a lot of the mistake is made. The reason people don't like digital amplifiers is because the compression isn't the same. So grab a compressor. First, put yourself a gate in there. That way you're not getting feedback like... I've got it turned down so low it won't feedback. I was going to try to force it to, but basically you want to leave your gain at 0 because all that your mixer or your audio interface is going to do is turn that audio from line level to high Z level. Okay, so the amp is expecting, or the app, or whatever you're using, the amp sim, if it's made correctly, should expect it to be basically at 0 coming in. So your input gain needs to be level, flat level, line level. Okay, don't turn it up by 4 or 5 dB and think, well, it'll be okay. Do that in the app. That way it's more natural. You don't have the ability on an amplifier to turn up your guitar before you plug it in. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, I use a boost pedal all the time, blah, 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 blah. Not the same thing, okay? After the guitar, the signal coming from the guitar itself needs to be the same. I understand you may plug into a boost pedal before you hit your amplifier. I'm doing that sort of as well. But what I'm saying is your input channel, just like the input channel there's no volume for your input on your first pedal or a pre-volume on your amp, okay? It expects a certain type of signal. Your pedal does, your amp does, as well as your amp sims do. So leave it at 0. This is super important, okay? Because if you don't, you'll never be happy with your sound or the ability to tweak it. You'll either be distorting the input and destroying your sound quality. Well, I do it all the time recording. I understand that. I really, really do. You shouldn't though, okay? Because it's meant to be at a certain level for these types of apps to function correctly, okay? Now, once you've done that, just leave it at 0. Plug in, okay? And you're gonna have your basic channel with a gate. You say, well, that's all right, you know. Let me turn this off too. So you've got a basic guitar amp, sounds good. Now the next thing I use, because of the way this pedal works, I have to put it before my compressor, okay? Here's why. It kind of turns it down. So I'm using the compressor in a couple different ways. I'm using it to actually bring up the electric flanger and give me compression as well. So you can hear that. With the compressor, I get without the compressor. So you can hear the difference. It just helps bring it up a little bit, and it doesn't hurt it to be before the compressor. Just don't put your distortion before the compressor because it will crunch it down. Distortion and compression are basically the same thing. One clips while the other really doesn't. So think of compression like clean distortion. I know that's an oxymoron of a word, but the best way that anyone ever explained pedal compression, especially to me as a teenager, was you like the way the guitar feels easier to play with distortion on it, correct? And I was like, yep. Compression does that for when you're playing clean, because I always hated clean guitar that didn't have sustain. I would try to play on the neck pickup, you know what I mean? Like turn my clean gain up, and then I ended up into distortion, and it just never worked correctly. So once I got my hands on my first compressor that actually could give me some lift as well as some snap, I was happy, and I got the same kind of feel out of the guitar. Now I'm hitting this thing super hard, okay? As you can hear, turn the flanger off. So all it does is gives us sustain and helps the note to be leveled out. Now, if you do a lot of volume up and down with your volume knob, like you like to turn down and roll up, turn down and roll up, you don't want to hit your compressor this hard. You may want to turn the output of the compressor up a little bit and bring like the sensitivity or the compression or whatever it's called on your pedal, okay? Now, there are like, I think 3 altogether in amplitude. There's the one I'm using, which is the smoothest of the 3. There's a decomp, which is, everybody knows what the decomp is. And then there's this other one called a sustainer, and it's the most aggressive of the 3. There's also a Fender one that has presets on it. It's like low, medium, high, and ultra or something. It's okay, but it turns everything up too loud. You need that volume or output at the end to turn it back down. So try to get them as level as possible from the initial transient, not the sustain. You say, well, that sounds louder. Well, it sort of is, because it's bringing up those low notes to be on more of a level playing field with the louder notes. It is. But think of it as, guitar players will understand this, but people that aren't guitar players won't. So when you're playing on a hot channel, like a heavy distorted channel or tube amp that can handle super heavy distortion, it's really easy to play through licks that you just can't do when you're playing clean. If you use a compressor, it actually is the same. It gives you that same sort of feel as heavy distortion without the distortion. So that's why I call compression clean or distortion for the clean channel. After that, I have a little tube overdrive, and all it is there for is to give me just a little bit of volume if I'm doing sort of a clean lead kind of thing. And it's rarely used because my amp has a hot channel. Sometimes I'll use it, but the way the music we're doing is kind of set up, it doesn't call for it very often, but it's there when I need it. Now, my guitar positions are, I play through a humbucker with 2 single coils. It's an Aria, and it's a Japanese guitar that I absolutely love. And it has a humbucker in the bridge with a split coil thing, and 2 single coils in the middle and neck. My position for most clean is either on the humbucker and middle single coil in an in-between spot, kind of like a dual single coil Strat, or I'll play in the position between the neck single coil and the middle single coil. Sometimes I'll use the neck pickup. Very rarely, unless it's more of a lead lick kind of thing. So, I mean, that's sort of my setup. Now, my channel is set the way you see it. I also have a crunch channel, which is basically, it ups the gain a little bit. This may be loud. It's perfect for chorus parts or parts where you need to play power chords. So that's that channel. And then I have the super hot channel kind of just cranked. Okay. Now my output effects are the Dimebag Darrell flanger doubler, the dime flanger doubler. What is it actually called? Yeah, just the flanger doubler. So you can see where it can come in handy because you only have 4 pedals in front of the amp, 2 pedals afterwards. And I use the Mesa Obsession delay. It's a great little delay, but that's my whole setup. I use an iRig Blue board, which gives me 4 pedals, right? You think, well, you have 3 in front and you have channels. Yeah, it also gives me the ability to plug in 2 more pedals. You can get those cheapo piano sustain pedals, and they work the same way. You just map them, and that gives you a total of 6 options. So basically, I can control the crunch, change the channel, okay? I don't ever turn my compressor off. That's just me, okay? You can turn on the flanger, the tube overdrive, and these 2 pedals here, as well as if I hold and sustain, it'll switch from flanger to doubler for me. That's my setup. and it's great. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to kind of shut this off because I'm terrible at playing and trying to talk at the same time. If anybody's ever been in a band situation trying to communicate by talking while playing a song at the same time, it's nearly impossible, and I don't know how people do it. So I'm going to switch the mic off and play a little bit through. So as you can hear, it's pretty cool to have that type of setup. I really enjoy it. I really like using it, and I can't complain. So I hope this helped somebody out. If it did, thumbs up. Also, while you're here on YouTube, check out another one of these videos here on your screen now. Subscribe for more Music Factory Studios, and we'll see you. Have a great day, y'all.